Hey, it's John, and welcome to the interview. Today, I'm joined by Martin Rutte, who's an international speaker and management consultant. Martin has worked with organizations such as the World Bank, Sony, Southern California Edison, Virgin Records, helping them expand their outlook and position themselves for the future. Martin's new book is Project Heaven on Earth, the 3 simple questions that will help you change the world easily. He helps people discover what heaven on earth is for them and what simple, easy, concrete action they can take in the next 24 hours to begin that reality. And today we're going to be digging a bit into Martin's journey as an entrepreneur, as well as his current project, Heaven on Earth. Before you do that, I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by the $1 Billion Legacy Agency, where we work with business leaders and movement leaders to expand their thought leadership using online marketing and new media strategies. Martin, thank you so much for coming by. Excited to have you here.
Thank you, John. A pleasure to be with you.
You bet. So let's start with your background. Let's give the listeners a little bit about who Martin is up to this point in his life. So what was it like growing up for you? What did you hear about success and money and all these kind of things growing up?
I was born and raised in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is in the US, it's equivalent to Pittsburgh. So lower middle class. My father ran with his brother, a fruit store and a hardware store. We never talked a lot about success. It's an interesting question. We were always kind of lower middle class. Money was an issue, not enough money. And then one day, Canada's first shopping center opened down the street from my father's business and just whacked the business, not him. So I never had a sense of, I always had a sense of business is hard work and you're not going to really make a lot of money. As a kid, I can remember sitting on the front porch of our house and I would read like 2 or 3 newspapers a day. I was just fascinated with the outside world. And I knew as a kid, I was here to change the world. It was like, my name is Martin. I just knew that. I had no idea how that was going to happen. None. Went to university, psychology, counseling psych, undergrad. What else? Then I worked in a hospital doing youth worker, one of the first programs in Toronto General Hospital. That got me into med school, which was a disaster, not for me. And I met this guy at a yoga retreat of all places in northern Michigan, Bob Branscombe, and he was a vice president of a hospital in Chicago. And he created a program, John, that merged personal development with goal setting. And I had never heard anything like that. And so for him, the notion of vision and responsibility and commitment, were very present. And I can remember just being fascinated by that. And I talked to my wife and I said, look, I got to go to Chicago and do this guy's course. I went to Chicago and I mean, this is entrepreneurial 101. At the end of the course, I walked up to him and I said, Bob, I know why you invited me to the course. He said, what? I said, yeah, you want me to take this course to Canada? He said, what? And I said, I don't care what you say. This is what I'm doing. So I took it to Canada and started just enrolling people, selling. I'd quit the working for the government at that time. I was out on my own. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I mean, 0, 0, 0. I just knew that there was gold here and that I wanted to do it. And thank God my wife was working because she really supported us. Yeah, really. But I felt there was gold here. And I saw what it did for people. I saw what the course did in the sense of really empowering people. Because one of the premises was you can go for that which is beyond what you believe possible.
Yeah.
Because the premise is you have to believe you can do something in order to do it. Bob's premise was, no, if that were true, then people would only do what they believe possible. But yet all of us have seen people who've done stuff and afterwards said, I don't believe I did that. Why is that? It's because they stepped out of that system. And then people said, look, then Bob said, I want you to give the training. And I went, me? I don't know how to do that. Fine, you're going to do that. So I did. And then people started saying, why don't you come to our company and start talking about vision? What? Okay. And why don't you come to our company and start doing some consulting? What? Okay. So I just kind of followed this, the imagery of a little stream, a little rivulet going downhill and just path of least resistance. And I remember one of the two really wonderful stories in the early days. Manny Battler, I said, Manny, I don't know anything about business. And he said, good, here's what you need to know. More money comes in than goes out. The rest you'll learn. And I never forgot that. And the other one was my friend Gordy Allen. We'd been operating in the red, and he was on my advisory board. And finally we were in the black. I think it was like $5,000, which was enormous. And he said, $5,000. Yeah, we're in the black, $5,000. We have no debt. All this money's coming in, blah, blah, blah. He said, good. Write out a check to me for $5,000. What? Write out a check for me for $5,000. I said, okay, fine. So I did it. He took it and he said, now what are you going to do? And that was another huge lesson that I couldn't rest on my success, because failure is a driver, but success can also be a trap. So those were, it's always been for me, John, where does the path go that gives me the most juice and that is of the greatest service to people? And the money truly is secondary. Money has never been the driving force for me, ever. I could care less. Yes, I have to have money, and I've made money, and I like that, but it's not the driver. Yeah. So that's, and then I ended up working with, as you said, very large corporations doing consulting on vision. So Sony Pictures, Southern California Edison, Virgin Records. I spoke 4 times at the Harvard Business School on vision. So, operating at a very high level in the consulting world, coming out of just meeting this guy, Bob Branscombe. Oh, and where Bob and I met, that was the other. We met at a yoga retreat in northern Michigan. And I was sitting on the side of a lake before I'd met him. And this red neon sign went off in my mind. And the sign said, the name of the game is Martin Rutte, and it can be played any way. And I never knew that. I never knew that you could make up the game the way you wanted it to. And so, as I look back, there are very clear entrepreneurial markers along the way. But I didn't know any of that. This just seemed the right next thing, the right next thing, and the right next thing. And thank God I have a wife who just really supports me. And you want to do that? Go do it. Right.
Very good. Yeah. So kind of a windy journey where you just kind of stumbled in and kept kind of going down the path and,
stumbled and clarified. If two major things, if it rang really deeply true, I would follow that. And there've been 3 or 4 incidents in my life where this kind of inbreaking, the first about vision and Bob Branscombe was like, oh yeah. In those days, when I started with vision, took this notion of vision back to Toronto, John, people said you can't talk about vision. People will think you're smoking dope.
Yeah.
That, in those days, now vision, nobody bats an eyelash. But in the early days, it was considered very weird and certainly nothing that business was engaged with.
Right. Okay. So you had these big moments, you kind of followed this path, and then you started working with some of these larger companies. You were able to get connections through people and referrals and things like that to some of these larger companies, and started a career as a consultant and management consultant and talking about vision. What were some of your biggest lessons or learnings from that process? You mentioned, following your heart or kind of really being engaged, but anything else you want to share about that journey that you learned, any mistakes you made or lessons learned that you could reiterate to somebody who's looking to follow a path like that or to become a consultant?
One immediately popped to mind when you said that. In the early days, I had met a very big developer in Toronto. I don't want to say his name, but buildings, apartment buildings, shopping plazas. This guy was big. And somehow, I've forgotten how, but anyway, I ended up at his office and we started talking. And I brought up the notion of vision. And he went, it'll never work. And I went, thank you, Jack. You're saying no, it will never work is exactly what I needed to do to make it work. So one of the major lessons I've learned is to follow what's true in here. I remember as well meeting with, I don't know, 5 or 6 people around the dining room table talking about I wanted to do this work on vision, all of whom said, you can't do that, which forced me to look inside to see, is this my truth? And it was. So the lesson in a sense is to not be addicted to what other people think, certainly to listen. And if they disagree with you, listen deeply, but also to follow your heart and soul. That for me is where the resilience and the energy, and people say, are you retired? Retired? What the hell would I do if I retire? I would do what I'm doing. It's a ridiculous notion.
So you've always seemed to have this ability, like when you said when you were a kid, you always felt like you were going to do something special to change the world. And then when people were telling you, well, that won't work. Even people that are smart people, right, that are respected and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like you didn't even let that phase you a bit. Is that true? Or did you even hesitate or question yourself on this, like, or you were so enthralled by the mission or of sharing this work that it didn't matter what the result was?
The distinction is this: the person saying, no, you can't do it, is an opinion versus what I saw happened when I brought this work to people.
Yeah.
And it was an opinion versus a result. Game over.
Right. Okay. Any other lessons or things that happened to you you'd like to share? I mean, you obviously had to have the belief in yourself and the confidence to step into working with larger companies and things like that. Anything you want to share around that for people that maybe are looking to jump from, they believe in their work and all that, but maybe they, I don't know, need the confidence or need the ability to kind of step into their own on bigger stages like that?
Let me talk a little bit about confidence, because that's in the same arena as belief systems.
Yeah.
The premise being that as soon as I have confidence, I'll be able to do this. No.
Right.
Because you'll wait for confidence from now till 17,000 years from now. Mm-hmm. Whether you have the confidence or not truly is irrelevant. This is what I want to do. So, I mean, I've gotten sucked into that. I'm too afraid. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I stop and think, well, yeah, but is it going to serve the mission or is it going to serve my fear? That's always been a very profound question for me. The other thing I did was I started work on spirituality and work. I don't even know that you know that about me. This was in the late 80s, I guess. And I'd gone into a funk and I didn't know why. And it wasn't my marriage. It wasn't my work. I love my wife. I love my work. And I ended up, this is a funny story. I'm Jewish, but I ended up at a Augustinian monastery. And I heard the message, it's about God. And it went click for me. And I began an inquiry in how do we talk about spirituality and work? Not that I was going to impose a particular religious point of view. That was in no way did I ever have that thought. It's just that I knew that there was a spiritual hunger there in people. And how do we bring that about? So again, everybody in Toronto, you can't do it. You can't talk about it. They're going to think you're proselytizing, which wasn't true. You can't do it. I go to Los Angeles. I talk to all my friends there, all of whom say, go for it. And so I saw the black and white almost. Everybody in Toronto, no. Everybody in LA, yes. And so again, I saw it was my fear. And once I saw that it was my fear that was driving me, I blew that away and began this inquiry, because I saw that people wanted to have their souls nourished at work, and you couldn't have that conversation. And so I began that conversation as well.
Yeah, a couple of things from what you shared there. I think one, be careful of the circles you're getting feedback in maybe sometimes, because in LA people were like, go for it. And in Toronto, they were like, yeah, that'll never work. So I guess you be careful of that. Right. And then the other part you shared was, the actions of confidence come before the actual feelings of confidence. Right. I think there's a good book called Confidence Gap out there, I think by Russ Harris, who's a psychologist, and he talks about the actions of confidence come before the feelings of confidence. And like you put it very well, I think, which is a huge point, because, fear is an entrepreneur. Fear is when you're an artist, an entrepreneur, whenever you're doing something that's outside of your bubble of comfort, it's, the fight or flight wants to kick in and keep you safe from the dinosaur or whatever, but it's, there's no dinosaur, and we got to take action anyway. So I like to
I
brought
think
that up.
I think we need to underline that even yet again,
Yeah,
John.
yeah,
It really is important to step into the arena,
yeah,
and then confidence either comes or it doesn't. It's
hmm,
irrelevant.
yeah,
You're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah.
So, any other lessons? I mean, I just have fun. Just I
Mm,
never know where this path's going to go, and I'm comfortable with that. And I realize it's not for everybody. I mean, I know a lot of people, some people in my family need a very structured, this is my job, this is what I do. And for me to talk to them about doing it my way would never work. It's
yeah.
disrespectful. Yeah.
How do you keep your fear in check? And then I want to segue into what you're doing now. But so basically, a lot of people as an entrepreneur, I know, especially if you're in the beginning stages or whatever, are a little afraid of, whether they're going to keep this thing going or they're going to keep the finances coming in and all that kind of stuff. Because, especially as in the beginning, it can be kind of a lumpy ride, right? You might
Yes.
land a gig and make some money. Woohoo, I'm on top of the world. And, oh, it's been a little slow the last month or two. And then, oh, yeah, I got another one. It's kind of like that kind of thing. How did you keep, because you had a wife, right? Did you have kids at the time as well?
No
Kids?
children. No.
Okay.
Which made it easier. I do realize that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But how did you keep your kind of mindset focused on having fun when you had the reality of money and bills and things? Because you seem like a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, or you seem like you have that. At least now you do.
I do. Yeah. No, I've always been that way.
Okay.
A couple of ways. I'm just thinking of how I do it. One is I meditate, or I watch my mind. And I watch the fear to see, because I know about fear. I mean, I jumped off a mountain in a hang glider with a guy, walked on hot coals. So in the early days, I was really interested in, what is this thing called fear in me? How does that work? I was fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Have really good people around you who support you in going for stuff that's beyond your comfort zone, who know what you are capable of much better than you are. I think if anything, I needed more of that. So I'm kind of a loner in that. And I think underneath it all, John, I knew it would work. I remember once in Toronto, literally robbing the piggy bank. I remember 4 jars, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, whatever. And I robbed that, and I thought, this is great, because I'll never do this again. Because it's going to work. But, and I think the embarrassment, there's a lot of pressure that everything I do is fantastic. It's only fabulous, and look at all my this and that and this and that. But it's not human. There have been failures. There have been times of being down. There have been times with, especially my wife, coming in and say, snap out of it. You got to get your life back together. Stuff like that, which I really like. I love it when people are more committed to me than what I think about them, and come to me and say, you've got to get this together. Boom. Or go for it. The people in LA, Jack Canfield, for Chicken Soup, when I started talking about spirituality work before Chicken Soup, go for it, go for it, go for it. I mean, that's like heroin to me when I hear go for it. It's just like, oh yeah. And I knew I grew up in a very conservative city, in a very conservative at that time country, and so part of it also was going to the U.S. and living there, and that mindset of let's go for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
To put yourself in spaces where people do go for what you want to go for, and where that's normalized.
I think everybody who's had whatever you want to call success or whatever for themselves has had a group of supportive people behind them, a tribe to kind of push them along. Because we all get in our own heads. We all have the am I enough complex, at least most people do.
Yep.
They kind of question that. And as we already talked about, the whole action before confidence kind of thing, surrounding yourself with awesome people that were prodding you to go for it. And as a result of that, you were taking actions regardless of fear or how you thought about yourself, kind of kept pushing you forward. So I think that's great for everybody listening to remember, surround yourself with good people and start taking action.
The other thing I would add too, I just listening as you're feeding back here, is I took a lot of personal growth courses.
Yeah.
And they were hugely important to me.
What were some that you liked?
I loved the S training.
It's Landmark now, right?
Landmark now, yeah. Oh God, Mankind Project. I loved Hoffman Quadrinity Project. I loved.
Hmm.
I've forgotten the other ones. But I mean, really, I wouldn't take a course unless I heard about it from a number of people who I really respected, who said, this course is great, this guy's great.
Yeah.
And then I just go in and play 1,000%.
Love that. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing some of your journey there and some takeaways. Appreciate that. Let's
Thank
segue
you.
into what you're doing right now, and let's talk a little bit about your project, Heaven on Earth. Could you just kind of define what you mean by heaven on earth? Is that a religious thing, or is that a personal thing for individuals regardless of that? Can you just kind of define for the listeners what that means?
No.
No, you won't define it, or no, it's not a religious.
No, I won't define it. And let me tell you,
Okay.
let me tell you why.
Okay.
There's a strategy here. You'll get it
Sure.
in a second. It's about 20, 25 years ago. I began looking at the world and saying, this isn't working. We need a new story. We need to take, in a sense, the work on vision, we need to apply that to our world. And I was going to do a speech actually on spirituality and work. And I was kind of meditating before in the green room. And I was thinking, if every business in the world is spiritual, however we define that for the moment, is that what you want? And I said, no. If we can transform business, because business is the temporal power in the world, we could transform the world. And then this thought popped into my mind, oh, you mean heaven on earth. And John, my first thought was, oh my God, you cannot say that. You can't say, I was like, whoa. But then I began to think about it. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I can talk to you about hell on earth. That's a permissible conversation. This isn't working. This political situation, the politics here, Brexit, blah, blah, blah. That's permissible. Well, why can't I talk about heaven on earth? And the distinction that I make in heaven on earth is it's not for me to define it for you. That would never work. Rather, it's for me to help evoke it from you, because my premise is you know what it is. The chances of me defining it and telling you, I would lose. So what I did over the years was I just started this inquiry with people, and I went and I said, what's heaven on earth for you? What's heaven on earth for you? And I had no agenda other than just this exploration, this inquiry into, well, what is it that I'm even talking about here? And so the way I found out was talk to people. And I boiled that down to 3 essential questions, which is the premise of my book. And we didn't talk about this before the interview, but do you want to play with me and do these questions?
Yeah, they were on the list of things I was going to bring up. So let's just go with the flow here. And why don't you tell us kind of what are the 3 questions practically of how you kind of bring this about? Go ahead.
But I want to know if you'd like to answer them as I ask them.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best here. You're putting me on the
fine.
spot here. I'm sweating a little bit. But...
I know. And I should have asked you before.
No, it's cool. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So question 1, and I want everybody who's listening, listen to it and then just stop it so you can answer the question. Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on?
You want me to answer that, right?
Please.
Yeah. I've always been, this is interesting. Yeah. Because it's kind of like defining that, like, I guess it would be a moment of bliss, right? Or a moment where you feel amazing as in your life, I assume. So yeah, for me, first thing that comes to mind, and I'll just rattle off whatever comes out, was, when I was younger, I was in sports and athletics. I always loved when I would succeed in that. I always loved the camaraderie of success and teamwork in sports. I could think of some career things as well where I felt very empowered and confident and feeling this light joy inside of me during those things. So I've always been, for right or for wrong, probably a little more externally focused on career and sports and things. And I remember some just real gems of moments that really inspired me inside. So that's what I got off the top of my head.
That's good. Here's the second question. Second question. Imagine you have a magic wand, and with this wand, simply by waving it, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you?
So my definition of my best life and heaven on earth, I think, would be, my wife and I are healthy with our son. We have a son on the way. We have time to be together. I think discretionary time is the real wealth for me. And so we make enough money. We have enough time. We travel to see family and friends on a regular basis. Because we have this time and space, also we get more involved in our local community. We build more local friendships. We're fairly new here in Reno, so I don't know. I love people, and I love time, and having time, energy, and good people in my life, I think is the ultimate bliss for me. Because one, if you have the time and energy to be present and powerful with those people, I think there's just such a gift. And obviously, having the money, time, and freedom to do that is my dream life at this point, and having the space also to just getting more involved in things outside of business, like causes and things as well that are important.
Very clear. And then the third question: what simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours to move that forward?
No, boy, huh? 24 hours. What simple step? I think everything, as we already talked about, starts with vision. And before we can create strategies, before we can create tactics for fulfilling the strategies, we need vision. And so for me, I think the step I could take today would be to sit down, take a few deep breaths with my journal, and kind of meditate into more clarity on what that really looks like in my life.
Very clear. So let's go through the questions. Question 1, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on? What you did, John, was answer my question. Sports, business, very clear for you what those were. What you did not do, and what no one does, is ask, what do you mean by heaven on earth? And even if you had, you notice I didn't answer the question.
I kind of hinted at that, like, well, I assume you mean this, but yeah, okay.
No, because I want you to know that you already have had those experiences from your definition, from what I call your already knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And the second question with the magic wand, what the magic wand does is removes the necessity of you having to know how you're going to get something. And if you don't have to know how, you can go purely into the what, which you did. Business, a successful business, income, time, being with family, working on a cause that I like, getting more relationships here in Reno. Very clear you knew what it was. And you imagine a room with 200-300 people all talking about what that is for them publicly. It's incredible. And then the third question, what simple, easy, concrete step will you take? Because I don't want you to leave it at the answer number 2. I want you to get engaged now, today, the next 24 hours, to take an action, to move that forward. So your mind goes, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. Yes, precisely. And you notice that I do not say what it is, because they can't work. But once you know what it is, once it's evoked from you, you're off to the races.
Yeah, I like that. So we went through the 3 steps then, which is
3 questions. Yeah.
3 questions for your that's your framework that you're using within this your book and your trainings and all this kind of stuff to kind of pull that out of people. Any other examples?
Here's the book.
There's the book, Project Heaven on Earth. We'll link to that.
Now, but I want to ask you a question. Read the title, just this part. What does it say?
Project Heaven on Earth.
There's another title. Project Heaven on Earth.
Okay, project. Yep.
It's both the verb and the noun. So that we have a state of being within ourselves that can project what heaven on earth is, and we're actually doing the actions of heaven on earth. Sorry, you had another question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, how do people begin to explore this kind of thing for themselves? Because, is it just as simple as getting out a journal and asking questions, or are there other strategies that people kind of use this to more clearly define what it looks like for them?
Yeah, what the rest of the book does, but in terms of me asking that question, the 3 questions like I just asked you, when you ask that question over and over and over, I want to suggest you ask those 3 questions with your wife tonight. When you ask those questions, or people you work with, when you ask those questions over and over and over, you begin to discover what I call patterns in the answers. They're what I call the 7 major gateways that come up. Not always, but generally. So it can either be in here, I want more heaven on earth in here. I want more heaven on earth in my relationships, in my nation. I want to end the suffering. I want to experience heaven on earth. I want to live a heaven on earth value. So the book goes into the rest of those major gateways. The purpose being, at the end of the book, you will know what heaven on earth is for you. And more importantly, you'll know what your heaven on earth project is. Because I want you to do, like for you, the journaling. We can go in a couple seconds if you want, but I have like tons of examples of what people have done. Maybe we should focus more on entrepreneurial people, what they've done. So
why don't you share a couple of like kind of short examples of what maybe some people have done that work? Because we went through my example kind of at least at the initial starting points of it. But do you have maybe a story or so that you can share?
Sure. Let me tell you one. So I'm meeting in Halifax, Nova Scotia several years ago with this woman, Brenda McKenzie. She's a real estate agent. And we're talking about heaven on earth. And I said, is there a suffering in the world? I don't even know where this thought came from, but I said to her, is there a suffering in the world that really bothers you? Yes. Homelessness. Like I punched her in the she went white. You could see the effect that word had on her. And I said, okay, so I get that's the suffering. What's heaven on earth for homelessness? And she said, well, obviously a home for everyone. But Martin, that's impossible. I work 87 hours a day. I'm a real estate agent. I'm in a relationship, blah, blah, blah. Fine. I said, stop it. What are you going to do? Light bulb goes on. She goes back to her agency. They have 10 agents, sits them down and said, okay, we are going to create a home for everyone easily. Here's how. I'm asking you to agree that when you sell a home or a business, that $100 would automatically come off your commission. All you have to do is say yes. The office will do everything else. They all said yes. They created a program called A Home for Everyone. They've raised so far, get this, $400,000.
Nice.
They have an award every year in which the 10 agents and one of their clients, so those 20 people, look at all the proposals that come in from various individuals and charitable organizations in the city, and then they assign the money. It's done incredible things for the business in terms of getting that word out there. This is what we're about. So that's a lovely plus for them. Plus, it's a real soul nourishing aspect. Another woman who, a simple example, she teaches people how to grow little microgreens. I said, well, I can't do anything. So what she did was she put her definition of heaven on earth at the end of every email that she sends out. Simple. I have another example here. I was with a woman who runs a little tea business. She blends and sells tea. I can't do anything, Martin. What can I do? And I said, well, what do you do? I create tea. I blend tea. I said, well, how about a heaven on earth tea? So she created, can you see this?
Yep. Heaven on earth tea. She did it, huh?
A blend of teas from around the world because she wanted the harmony of the world, plus from Prince Edward Island where she is. We have a businesswoman here, a jewelry store. She owns 2 jewelry stores. She gives out a little card with the 3 heaven on earth questions with every purchase. She's given out almost 10,000 of those. So yeah. What amazes me, John, is the creativity that comes out of it when people say, this is what I can do. And we even had a consultant in Sweden who said, I have another question, Martin. Using the same magic wand, what's heaven on earth for your business? And I thought, what a brilliant question. So she now asks that in her consulting. She has people say, what's heaven on earth for your business, and start them on that road.
Yeah, very good. So yeah, some good examples to kind of clarify that. So is it really just a matter of people aren't taking the time to ask the questions, or is it that and also that they kind of look for reasons why it's impossible versus how it can be done?
Yes. We've never had heaven on earth. We can't have heaven on earth. Look at all the BS going on in the world. Don't you understand? It can't be done. It can't be done. It can't be done. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. What are you going to do about it? Because we need to stop that thinking that it's impossible.
Yeah.
How do you know that? I mean, it's impossible to get to land a man on the moon. It's impossible to do. I've been studying quantum computing lately. It's mind-boggling what that can do once that comes on board. It's impossible.
Yeah. And every one of us can do it in our own way, right? Or our own.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like, solving all of how people think it's an all or nothing thing, maybe, right? It's like, well, I can't get rid of every homeless problem. So, it can't be done, but then they shut down from the fact that they could reduce it maybe by their own efforts or their own company,
You have no idea what difference you can make by your action. Let me give you another really powerful one. We're doing this webinar and we're talking about the sufferings in the world. And this woman says, I'll tell you a suffering, violence against women in my county. I've been to the police, I've been to the government, nothing. And she was mad. What would you do? Well, I don't know your financial situation, Susan. You could donate a penny. You could donate $5,000. Well, what difference would a penny make? One of the other women on the call said, wait a minute. What if everybody in your county donated a penny a day for a year to help end violence against women? She went, oh my God. And they started a program called Making Change, brilliant title,
wow.
In which they handed out a little mason jar with a picture of a woman, half her face bruised, beaten up, half her face bright, alive. They asked you to donate a penny a day. You couldn't put $3.65 in and say, okay, that's my contribution for the year. No, a penny, because they wanted to keep that in your awareness. They raised $2,500 in 2 counties. They took that, this is in Canada, they took that to the government of Canada, which has a group called Status of Women. Get this, John, they gave them $100,000 for each of the subsequent 3 years. And now she's $300,000 total. Now she reports anywhere she goes in the county, what can I do to help? So you have no idea what a simple action that you take, what difference that can make. And in fact, that is one of the things that I'm discovering, that it is the simple actions that you take, that it's simple, do that. That is what starts the ball rolling.
Yeah, I love that. So I think that paints a pretty good picture as to what you're doing and what you're passionate about. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, John.
Very inspiring talk here. That's great. So let's do one final segue as we wrap this up into yourself and your journey and where you want to take this thing. So what kind of impact are you hoping to make with this project or with the rest of the time you have here on this earth?
I think what's needed is a new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. 5 or 10 years ago, we kept hearing this phrase, the world's not working. The story of the world is not working. We need a new story. We need a new story. But nobody spoke about what that story is. And so we stopped hearing that language. I'm inviting you to engage in this Project Heaven on Earth in a way that works for you, that's simple for you, knowing that there are people all around the world who are engaged, from adding what Heaven on Earth is to their email all the way up to a woman in Austria who's taken on the country to make Austria a Heaven on Earth country, and whatever it is for you, so that we are co-creating the new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. That's what this game's about. And I know that it's working. Book sales, but more importantly, yesterday I did this little experiment. If you go to Google and put in Heaven on Earth in quotation marks, so Heaven on Earth in quotation marks, 2018, you'll get yesterday about 8.63 million results, not all having to do with me by any chance. If you put in 2019, we're at roughly the end of September already when this is being recorded, we're at 14.2 million. So we're at 164% of the totality of last year already this year. Now those numbers vary because Google does its algorithms differently for people. But the point is that it's a significant leap over where we were. What I think is that it's going on under the radar of culture, that people are saying, look, the way it's going with the threat of nuclear war, thank God it's lessened, with the climate change, with refugees, with political instability, there is a willingness, I think, present in the world today to think about things that we've never thought about. Like, all right, you want what I want to do? Let's have Heaven on Earth. I know it sounds bold, I know it sounds crazy, but let me tell you what Heaven on Earth is for me, because you do know, and here's what I'm doing to do that. So my book, Project Heaven on Earth, and I have a thing called the Case for Heaven on Earth. If you buy a case of my books and send me to Project Heaven on Earth, the contact there, 20 or more books, I'll do a free webinar for you, for your group. So my book's available on Amazon worldwide. You can also sign up for a free course and weekly blog at projectheavenonearth.com. So I want people to marinate in this if it resonates with you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll link up. It's projectheavenonearth.com is the website. We'll link that
Yep.
up below this page. But for everyone listening on audio, it's projectheavenonearth.com. They can buy your book there as well as put that into Amazon and other areas as well, right?
Only on Amazon.
Amazon. Okay.
Yep. Worldwide.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, Martin, thank you so much for coming here today. I'll give you the final word. If there's anything, that we didn't talk about that you want to share with everyone here, we'll give you a chance to do that. And then we've already told people where they can find out more about you. That's at projectheavenonearth.com. Any final words for our listeners, and then we'll wrap this up.
Just thank you, John, for doing this. I love this interview. I can tell about an interview by the depth with which I'm speaking and the clarity. So it has to do with you as well in our relationship. Yeah, the final word is we have begun this new story called Heaven on Earth. There are people all over the world who are doing this. This is much more than a good idea. This is actually taking place. On my website, projectheavenonearth.com, if you go to stories and scroll down, you'll see 63 examples from all over the world of what people are doing. And let me know what you're doing. Let me know what your Heaven on Earth project is.
Awesome.
Thanks, John.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Martin. And everyone go check out projectheavenonearth.com and grab Martin's book as well. And thank you so much for coming by, Martin, and sharing your journey, as an entrepreneur and some strategies around, hanging out with the right people, getting the right feedback, taking action over confidence. We talked a lot about that, about Project Heaven on Earth and the 3 questions people can ask themselves to get clarity on that and start taking action. And then, your vision for the future. So appreciate your time, and hope everyone enjoyed this conversation with Martin Rutte of the Project Heaven on Earth. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.